All right, we are on episode 28, Images of the Desert, RR, and Tamarisk. RR sounds like a Star Trek character, or RR, or pirate tree. It's a pirate bush. That's what it is. So if you haven't seen the last two discussions or listened to the last two episodes, go back and listen to those before you hear this discussion, because it's all building on top of the other. So last week we talked about two trees. The week before we talked about a shepherd. This week we're talking about another bush and another tree. And I like his little reminding in the beginning: if empire is Pharaoh and his stick, then shalom is shepherd and his voice. Instead of fear and coercion, it's care that guides us. And I really feel like it's like that, you know, being like trying to follow Jesus. He cares about me. It's not just I'm following these rules just to get to heaven or something. Mm-hmm. Like he really wants the best for me. So in RR, I guess that's how you say it, RR, maybe. He says, a beautiful bush with grapefruit-sized fruit, but it's toxic. And the fruit is almost empty except for a toxic milky substance and cobwebs. Looks like cobwebs, kind of gross. But, I mean, it's beautiful. Like, you come to it in the desert, I imagine it's like, man, like this fruit looked good. Like he says he picks it up and it's like, got some heft to it. Like feels like there's sustenance in there. And then you open it up, cobwebs. Mm-hmm. It's like cobwebs. And then if you eat it, he didn't say you die, but you get sick.
Well, you know what it looks like that? Gourds.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. We had gourds grow all over the country, and they get pretty good size. You crack them open, they're all kind of webby inside.
Yeah.
Can't eat it.
Where was that?
Nothing to it.
Israeli gourd.
Yeah, maybe.
So he referenced Jeremiah 17:5-6. So this is what the Lord says: "Cursed is the one who trusts in man, who draws strength from mere flesh, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. That person will be like a bush in the wastelands. They will not see prosperity when it comes. They will dwell in the parched places of the desert, in a salt land where no one lives." And he was saying the word for bush there is the arvar. And I guess that bush represents trusting in man rather than trusting in God, because you look at the bush and it's beautiful. It looks fruitful, but it's not. And he was kind of describing how, I think it was like David looks at his enemies, or in Proverbs it talks about evil people prospering, and it seems like the good people never prosper. Yeah. And this bush is kind of representative of that, because it's beautiful, but it's toxic. Yeah. Like no fruit to it. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about with that when he was talking about that fruit. Is that's how stuff is, right? I mean, even the stuff that we, it looks good, it seems promising, but then it's empty
and poisonous.
Or it's bad for you. It's empty. It's bad for you. It looks nice. It looks pretty. And I was like, man, that's how stuff is. Mm-hmm. It's exactly how things are. Every time I'm like, oh, this is great. It's not. You know? And then it made me think about him, what we talked about last week, or maybe, I mean, not just last week, but ongoing, is just giving you enough. Like, but then there's other things that look like it's, ooh, that's more. It's better. It's good, but it's not. You go, but this is enough to get by. That is garbage. You know? And I think that's how I live life. I think something looks better than what I have, but then it's junk.
Like that tree looks like it has plenty of fruit.
Yeah.
You try to eat it, and it's like, oh, now I'm sick.
No.
Probably get dehydrated, die in the desert.
Not everything that glitters is gold.
Yeah.
You know, we get sidetracked by when you break it down to what do I really need. But sometimes I think that's people say that to contradict the idea of ambition. You know, I know growing up, oh, I want to be this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, just be satisfied with what you have. But so there's a difference between seeking something ambitious and just settling for what's out there. So there's got to be a balance.
Yeah. For some reason, when you're saying that, I was thinking about Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Like Steven singing, "I want more."
But stay underwater and all that. But I get what it's saying. I mean, we can't be sidetracked by what someone else has, thinking I need that.
Yeah.
But it's got to be just the heart behind it.
Yeah.
Because when he talks about Jeremiah, which when I was looking at the scripture, it says juniper. And I'm like, is that a different kind of tree? Is it the same kind of tree? I don't know. But the heart behind that is trusting in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be ambitious but not trust in it.
Yeah.
Like you can go, I'm going to go after this and work hard at it, but that's if it doesn't work out, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trusting in it. I'm not building my life on it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Amen. Great, do it. But I think it comes down to the heart of trusting in it or not trusting in it.
And then sometimes you got to back to the reason of why am I pursuing this? Is it something I really believe
That's a good
God
point.
has for me and called me to, or is it because it's what everybody else is doing, or I got nothing else to do? There's always that internal question when it comes to those things. But one of the things that made me think about was 2 Timothy 2, having a form of godliness.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
With the 9 spot.
and it's like, this really deals with the thing of the heart of the individual, because I may do the things that Christians do, but it doesn't make me a Christian.
Right.
I heard something the other day about the man of God, what was his name? Cornelius? How he was a God-fearing man, but wasn't a follower.
Yeah.
So, whenever I heard that, always heard that term, God-fearing man. What does that really mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of this relates back to what I call my manhood study. God-fearing man, and Proverbs talks about 3 types of men: the simple, the wise, and the fool. Technically, all 3 of them is God-fearing. So the idea of this tree, it's not enough to just do the acts, what we call, what's that? You know what I'm saying, right? No. What's it called? Behavior modification.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There you go.
So, I go to church, I dress up fine, I say the right words at the right time, but it doesn't mean it's having any effect on the inside. There's no fruit.
Right.
What does Jesus say he does with a tree that produces no fruit, right?
It's kind of like somebody sweet talking somebody else, like say all the right words to get in here, but then when they get in there, they break it. They don't really appreciate and love the person that they're going after.
Yeah.
I was thinking even then when he says that even demons believe
Yeah.
and shudder. Anybody can believe, anybody can fear God.
Does
Doesn't
that
mean
the
they
demons are closer to God than you are?
yeah. Doesn't mean they love him or want to follow him or be with him or anything.
God knows my heart. I'm a good person. I know this.
Okay, that's, even that phrase.
Yeah.
God knows my heart, or even say I'm a good person.
Doesn't mean he likes me.
It always makes me think Jesus, when he was like good teacher, and Jesus said, "Why do you call me good?" And I'm like, if that's what Jesus said,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever say I'm a good person. I don't
know if I
think
can.
so.
To me, I don't think the idea a good person exists. I mean, we may do things that are attributed to being a good person, but that doesn't make me a good person. Because inside, example, so my roommates, I tell them, okay, you can have my food, use my things. But then when they do it, I'm irritated. I'm irritated. Mostly because, okay, just let me know, and they don't let me know. I'm like, this morning I wanted some eggs.
All of it gone.
And I had a dozen in there.
No wells.
And there was no eggs. How do you eat a dozen eggs and not at least say, hey, Steve, I ate your eggs?
Yeah, and I say something about it.
Right.
That way I'm not all excited, hey, I'm going to move for some eggs. And then
Or
I
at
got
least
no
leave the
eggs.
last 2.
At least leave me something.
Or replace them.
But it's not a big deal because I never deny a person food. But we were talking about the form of godliness, but on the inside, I'm irritated.
Yeah.
Don't be touching my food. Don't touch my things.
Who
So there's
said
that.
that?
Yeah. Who said? Oh,
I know
that's
I
right,
did,
I did, but
I didn't mean
I didn't mean it. It's being nice. So the good person on the outside doesn't mean there's a good person on the inside.
That's why I hate when people say I'm trying to be nice.
You try.
Like you either are or you aren't nice. Like,
And
so
define
if I'm like trying to be nice to someone and they make me mad, I don't think I'm trying to be nice to you. Like I think that initially, and then I'm like, I hate it when people say that, so I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah. Or if you're ever in an argument, usually it's more of probably a spouse thing.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't trying to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, well, I hope you weren't trying to hurt my feelings. If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you've got a lot more problems. Like you were trying, like I wasn't trying to. I hope you weren't trying to.
I'll break all your stuff.
I don't mean to be rude.
Yeah.
But I'm
But I'm about to be
But I'm
rude.
going to be.
Yeah.
No offense. But.
Yep.
Oh,
Ava said that to me one day. I was like,
Did she?
what? And then she didn't say anything offensive. I'm like, do you know what that means?
You don't know what that means.
Here's a question for you. So we're talking about the
That's fun.
tamarisk tree, and I thought about it. You know how the women were named after trees, right? Tamar is the shortened word of tamarisk. I wonder if that's how she got her name. I don't know if the tree came first or she came first, because she means righteousness, more righteous than I. And then you had the tamarisk tree that, Abraham planted.
Well, I guess how
So
far
I
along
wonder if
it was
that was a little
Tamar
before.
after Abraham.
But I wonder if that's how she got her name, was being that righteous tree,
Maybe.
being kingdom.
It's a good connection.
So,
Well, I mean, like they said earlier, they name people to kind of guide their destiny.
how fruitful that tree
You know,
would be.
so yeah, if they were naming her Tamar, then
Yeah.
they probably had that in mind that I want Tamar to be fruitful, but in ways that affect generations, not just the here and now. Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry for getting here a little late. But
We're on the RR tree.
Oh,
Just
they
started-
are?
We're just getting
Yeah.
started.
Tiger
Oh,
tree.
so you
The
haven't covered,
RR.
you haven't covered the
That
tamarisk
sounds
yet?
more accurate.
Or the Lion King tree.
I like the analogy that he used, that, the fruit of the arar, it looks full until you break it open.
Mhm.
And then it's really empty.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the opposite of the tamarisk, which, in a drought, it looks dead. But it's really alive, and there's a lot more there to the tamarisk than.
Well, that was the acacia.
Was it the
Yeah,
acacia?
the acacia
I got
one
that one
that
mixed up.
looks
Okay.
that looks dead until the rain comes.
Ah, the
Yeah,
acacia.
I've got
Okay.
it.
Okay, thanks for the correction.
Well, I mean, you're on the right track.
But I like the analogy
You're still
that,
right.
that the one, it looks full, but you open it, it's empty, and then the other one looks dead, but it's really the better tree, and there's really a lot there. And sometimes, I know that, sometimes in the world looks that way, you got the one fruit that looks really good, you can find out it's not. It promises a lot,
Yeah.
but it never, it's really
deliver.
empty. And,
Yep. Always.
You say that, and it makes me think like a sponge,
Mhm.
where our lives are. When the pressure's on, what's in comes out.
Yeah.
And if we're relying on men, we're not putting anything in. So that when the pressure's on, there's nothing there.
True. Never thought about
So deep, Steve.
Very true.
You been reading the Book of Knowledge or what?
that.
Yeah, I kept one of those books. Actually, that was an old Bible school concept. So that's like 20 years old.
That's like that guy that talks about, I think it's Laughter Way to a Better Marriage. Oh, no, it's not. It's one of those where he brings two coffee mugs. One has red beads, pink beads, one has blue beads. And he hits them together. He's like, you know why the blue beads came out? 'Cause that's what's in there. Because when people say, oh, that's not me. That's it.
But when you break or when you're pushed,
You know,
what comes out?
yeah, what comes out?
That's why we read, we study, we go through things like this, study the BEMA, so that these things are in us. So when life comes at you, you got some ammo you can fight with.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think the acacia tree really encouraged me last week because I can feel unfruitful for a long time, but it also gives me grace for other people that they're the same way.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for me to be like, "Oh, you're not fruitful," but I'm not either.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like that lesson really impacted me last week, and this one did too.
Yeah.
Just the two different trees. But going on to the I guess since Gordon was talking about the acacia tree, he still brought it up in this podcast in Jeremiah
Right, Jeremiah 17.
17, 7 through 8.
Right.
He said, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought. It never fails to bear fruit. So that's what he was saying. The acacia tree was like, even though its leaves aren't always green, I don't think, but I mean, I've never seen one, so I'm just going by what the pictures he had.
And they described the acacia tree, all the many uses it has. He talked about these the knobs on it that you could feed a camel with.
For a week with a kilogram.
Just a small amount.
Yeah.
So it's like, the things we may not see, and that's the thing, we don't really notice how we mature in Christ. We never really noticed. I mean, at what point did you realize how tall you were? Until after the fact? It takes a while.
Yeah.
Do you remember learning to tie your shoe? You just started tying a shoe. So it's like with the spiritual life, and this tree relates back to the idea that we never really noticed the tree until after the fact. And I think that's part of God's way to keep us humble, but also to encourage us when we do see it. And just because we don't see things happening doesn't mean things aren't happening.
Yeah.
Like Stephen never saw Paul converted, but it was because of but we know because Paul saw him ascending, that affected Paul, or saw it. So this idea of being fruitless doesn't mean we're being fruitless. It's just not seeing things in our timing. And then the idea that sometimes we feel like we need to be producing fruit, but it's not up to us to produce the fruit. I mean, you can plant the seed, water the plant, but you still can't force that fruit to be produced. We had a lemon tree in our yard that never produced any lemon, but it was a lemon tree. The only thing it produced was a 4-inch spike, thorns on it.
Wow.
But good for popping football. But it was still a lemon tree regardless of the fact that it produced lemons.
Yeah.
Or could we question that? Is it a lemon if it doesn't produce?
Right.
And so sometimes in our lives, I've sensed this many times when I'm not being fruitful, or I'm not pursuing the way I think I need to be pursuing something. But it seems like I'm procrastinating. I remember a friend telling me sometimes procrastination isn't the idea of you're not doing anything. Procrastination could just be a season of rest. Because some plants, they need to rest from producing. And so sometimes when we feel like we're not being fruitful or productive, maybe we're just in a season of rest, and we need to take advantage of rest. I mean, we began this whole study with the concept of the necessary for rest.
Yeah. That's tough, I think. That meme today about something, I don't remember what it was, they were talking about rest. I don't remember what it was about now, but it was on Facebook about resting and about whatever. And
I think it's the one I'm thinking of. He said, "Can we make taking like a break
yes.
normal?"
Yes.
And I was like, commented, I was like, "That's why God created the Sabbath."
Right. Right. And it's funny though, because I think like being old school, I guess, I go, okay, yeah, great. I mean, absolutely, because I think we've got to learn to rest, right? And actually rest, not because that's one thing I feel like is when I'm trying to rest, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
I'm not maybe doing church, whatever, anything. So it's rarely ever like I feel guilty if I'm not doing anything, especially because my wife will do stuff all the time. She's a hard working person. But I was thinking, and maybe this is like pharisaical or whatever, but then I think, okay, but when we're resting for weeks and months and years on end,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's resting from spiritual stuff, though. Like, we need rest in general. Like, if you work 7 days a week, you still need to rest.
And I think what we should do is we should take like a Sabbath where I'm not doing nothing today. Like, I'm not cleaning. I'm not, doing, this stuff. I'm not whatever. I'm just, I can love God, spend time with God or whatever. But anyway, it's just I think if we did it regularly, we wouldn't feel that other way about it.
Yeah.
We wouldn't feel.
It wouldn't be odd.
Yeah, it wouldn't be like, why do I? Because it's our culture in America not to rest, right? I mean, that's just
To be restless.
yeah, what it is. We work all the time,
Well,
and the rest of the year, the rest of the world takes a month off of work for a holiday.
Yeah.
Month off of work, forget it. So I think what you put was perfect because it's like we need to start, and maybe it's not like a literal Friday night till whatever,
Yeah.
but it's still
At some point.
a chunk of time. And why not every week? Sabbaths every week. Why can't we do that every week?
Yeah. We do everything else every week.
That's right. That's right. But at the same time too, because then you start thinking about these other thoughts about, like, all right, so there's some folks I know play 6 hours of video games today. Is that Sabbath? Is that not Sabbath? I don't know. And there's a balance of things with the fruit stuff. Like one thing I've always thought is we like bearing fruit. I mean, our lives should bear fruit as far as making disciples goes. But as far as like the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, all that, it's like those should come from the Spirit, not because I'm trying to act that way.
Yeah.
And so then it makes you think, okay, so what I need to do is, what does Paul Timothy? Fans of flame, or he talking about gifts of the Spirit, but it's still
Stir up the.
yeah, it's like giving the Spirit room, kind of like what they talked about a few weeks ago, giving the Spirit room to work in my life, you know, so that the fruits do come out, because it's a fruit of Him, not a fruit of me. Because I make it the fruit, I try to make it the fruit of me, because I'm supposed to have it. I don't have it. Instead of getting the Spirit, I want to do it. You know, and that's wrong too. So now I'm feeling tired.
And I'm frustrated because
That's from trying to have fruit.
Because this patient is taking too long.
That's right. That's right.
My roommates ate the stuff I told them
Ate
they could eat.
How dare they do what
He ate my
How
eggs.
dare they do what I
He
told
ate
them
my
to do?
eggs.
At least they didn't leave you with an empty shell.
Right.
That would've been terrible.
Fill a whole thing full of empty
Back
shells.
to back with empty shells.
Because that's what the Aurora would have been like.
Yeah.
Because I read a commentary that said, why is it called
Okay.
curse? Is because if you're a hot, thirsty traveler approaches a tree and picks a nice big fruit, you'll find a nasty surprise. When opened, the fruit makes a popping sound, and a hollow filled webs, dust, and dry pit. The Bedouin called the tree the cursed lemon, or Sodom's apple, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Wow.
Because it grows in the desert in the salt land surrounding the Dead Sea where Sodom and Gomorrah once were. According to legend, then God destroyed Sodom and He cursed the fruit of the tree also.
Wow.
So it was an interesting
Yeah, what
commentary.
if that was the case? You know, while you were talking,
Sodom's apple.
I was thinking,
You don't want to be called that.
you know, we want to
You don't want to
produce
eat from
fruit,
that tree.
but when you were saying like we don't think about how tall we're growing, or like we don't think
America's
back to
tree.
when we started learning how to tie our shoes. While you were saying that, I was thinking, if you travel and you look back, you see how far you've come and what you left behind.
Yeah.
So it's like, have I left behind a mess,
Yeah.
or have I left behind good fruit? Because we're producing fruit
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. It's either
That's
good
true.
fruit
That's
or bad fruit. That's what I was thinking. I was
Yeah.
like,
And that's part of the study here is like, we're gonna go about what we leave behind in
That's
this
a good
man.
point.
yeah,
Very good point.
what am I leaving for my grandchildren?
That's one of those things that's deep that we as men need to know and realize. Again, going back to the whole point of my first revelation of the manhood study, it's not about me anymore. Nothing is about me.
Mhm.
It's all about not even what I can produce, but for why. You know, who am I doing this for? You know, as a single guy, I always thought make comments like, I know who I am, where I'm going, and why. You know, and I dare say most guys can't say that. You know, and it all goes back to, you know, studies, man, where are we leaving? What's the whole point?
Yeah, been in many jobs and go, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So then he starts talking about the tamarisk tree and how if you come across one in the desert, he said you know that it was planted because it requires cultivation. They don't just grow by themselves. Like I'm assuming you can't just throw the seed out and it just springs up and is okay. I guess you have to have like another stick to tie it to. You know, like how you think about trees growing, and they have to have these things. But he was saying it's known as a salt cedar because it absorbs what little moisture there is and puts it into the shade. And he said the shade is significantly cooler than other trees. And he said, I don't know how you know that, but that's what people have said, I guess. But it said
Somebody stated that.
it takes that moisture out of the air and puts it into a shade. So I'm assuming it's like one of those spots at like a water park where they just mist,
Yeah.
you know, and you're like, oh yes,
Yeah, I
I'll
think
give you
he
these
said
mist
it's like
areas.
about 10 or 15 degrees cooler.
Yeah, that's an interesting,
that's-
an interesting fact.
That's my kind of tree
Yeah,
there.
let me put some of those in my backyard.
would
Plant
that
one of
be
those
okay?
and call them Groot.
Salt
Groot.
I'll see.
Absolutely.
I have to get one.
Mrs. Groot.
Yeah, but he said it takes 80 years to reach full maturity. So your grandchildren
Well, it's kinda-
experience that tree, not you.
Right.
That's
In any
definitely
way.
mapped out as man, it takes it a year for him to for sure.
Maybe it's a different kind of salt cedar, because there are salt cedars, a lot of salt cedars around here. In fact, if you go south, there's a thing called sulfur draw, and it goes, I don't know how many hundreds of miles, but it goes partly through Lamesa, that area, down by my dad's house, and it's really long. I don't know how far it goes, but growing up, it was empty. But now when we go out there, there's salt cedar trees, and they're as tall as this ceiling. So they're not 80 years old. I mean, I'm not 80 years old,
Obviously.
so they're not 80 years old, unless they were growing for a long time.
Yeah.
But they're really big, and I mean, and they've taken over the whole place. I was trying to get the picture. I can't get the picture to come out, but I was going to see if that's what they look like.
And the Badlands in New Mexico is known, some of those salt cedars were, I don't know, because there were people that still find arrowheads stuck in the bark of some of those. I mean, the trees have probably been around 100 and 200 years or longer.
Yeah, I wonder if those trees that you were talking about just have been bred that way. Maybe because people mess with stuff all the time and they make things where they
And it could
grow
be
faster,
a
produce big
different,
fruit.
like a different variant of it, yeah. Because they don't grow like this. They grow more like from the ground. It's like bushy all the way up. I mean, unless this has been, made that way.
Yeah,
So maybe it's just a variant of it, a different, Because that's the.
it's interesting though how it looks
Tamarisk,
like.
right?
It comes up and it comes out so much.
Yeah.
It's got so much shade.
Right. And it
Our
doesn't
salt
look
cedar
like that.
didn't look like that.
Heck
It's
yeah.
like it just grew that way.
I didn't see that picture.
Was that one on there, or was that you found?
Oh, I was just found different ones.
So for anyone who's watching and can't see what we see,
That's right.
just
Google
go to
James has got some really
Google
cool
and
pictures
Google
though.
Tamarisk.
Tamarisk,
Tamarisk.
Tamarisk tree, and you'll see what we mean. But he was saying that if you planted it for your grandchildren. You would never see the fruit of your labor. And he goes on to talk about Abraham in Genesis 21:32-34. I'll just read it. After the treaty they had made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of the forces, returned to the land of the Philistines, or Philistines, if you want to say it like he does. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. So Abraham knew that God was going to give him a son at some point in time, and that son was going to have kids. So he's like, I'm going to plant this tree. I'll never see these grandchildren, and I'll never see the fruit of this tree.
Wow.
I can't imagine thinking that way. Like, I haven't had a kid yet. I don't know if this is to a point where he's already had his son, or if this is after. But anyway, he knew that God was going to keep his promise. But the questions that came out of that was, how many tamarisk trees did you plant today? And how many seeds did you plant that you will never see the fruit of?
Right.
And what are the things you've done that your grandchildren will benefit from? Do the things that you will never see the benefit of.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people have gotten irritated because they want to see fruit now.
Yeah.
Like Martin used to talk about that. He wants to see the fruit now. But I'm like, bro. I mean, now he lives in Oklahoma and he's married, so he's never going to see the fruit of anything that he did while he was here until he comes back 40 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that statement. What do you do? What do I do today that will benefit tomorrow? It reminded me of Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. If I want to consider myself a good person, a good man, that's something I should actively do. And be
Good
thinking about
patriarch.
tomorrow. And it's not just money, but like I have these wisdom journals. Can you see them? Absolutely not. You got to get your own. But one day,
No, I'm coming to your house.
but one day when I pass, those are things that I'll pass on to my children, hopefully. And so it's something I do actively. When I read a book, I'll underline it, and then if it's something I think worthy. Now I have it categorized, but it's also one of those things that, there are things my dad teaching me that I use today. My grandpa Frank taught me how to do stuff. And then growing up, I just liked being that guy who knew how to do stuff. Even today, I like being that guy who knows how to do stuff. Why? I have no idea. I just like knowing how to do stuff.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think the part of it, well, I mean, it's tough, right? Because like that Proverbs one is maybe talking about, just kind of handling, stewarding, everything. But I was thinking today, I sent a text to my son, and he sent me a text back, and he had made a comment, and I was like, I need to call him. I need to send him a message and, tell him this is what I think you should do, or this is whatever. And I thought, who do I think I am? I mean, now if he's like, I don't know how to fix this, okay. But I mean, I'm talking about just a spiritual, feeling thing, kind of a mindset thing. I was want to kind of coach him, tell him, and I'm like, how about I just pray for him? How about that? How about I just pray for him? And I started thinking about my kids, and I was thinking about our campus ministry in the church. I started thinking about because I'm always thinking, what can we do? How can I make it better? How can I whatever? And I thought, man, I really can't. I mean, even with my own kids, I can't. I mean, I can make them. I can ground my daughter for now.
Yeah.
But a few months she had to be in my house. I can't do anything. So I was like, I think that's always reminds me of Madeline. I mean, that lady prayed.
He did.
She was. I don't love the phrase prayer warrior really, but she was. You know what I mean? She was, because that lady, she didn't just pray, but she prayed with faith. She believed what God said. I'm like, whoo. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to pray. Not that I don't pray for my kids all the time anyway, but instead of always trying to tell them, give them how smart I am, which I'm sure later on in life I go, that was stupid. But if I pray for them, there's nothing wrong with that. That's nothing but good. So I think that's one of the big things. And I was thinking about the fruit. It's tough because I think about being fruitful and all that. And I think, farmers, farming is one of those deals that's like, it's just a never-ending battle. It's not like you farm now and then that's it, the rest of your life. No. I'm thinking about cotton farmers, but they farm this year, they got to cut it all down and farm it next year. Cut it all down and farm it the next year.
And pray
Hope
that hail doesn't come and ruin
just
the whole
pray that it
crop.
rains. And pray that it doesn't rain too much. And pray it doesn't rain wrong time. But it's just an ongoing thing. So I was thinking about fruit in terms of going to help people become Christians. I think I should be actively working towards that. But God's the one that will, just like farming, right? It'll rain or it won't. It'll hail or it won't. It'll be too muddy or it won't. And you don't have any control over that, but you do have control over planting. You do have control over trying to help it grow,
Cultivating.
killing weeds and killing bugs, yeah. So I'm like, okay, I got to do that stuff. And I just think that's when I think about all these trees, I think God's doing it, but I've got my part, Which is interesting about this tree, because somebody had to plant it and help it, right? And so I'm sure there's a much bigger lesson in there somewhere for us, right? Because maybe there's things that God's like, I'm gonna make this one grow, but that one you need to go help it.
Well, I mean, even Jesus, making disciples was 3 years. It wasn't he just, right?
Well, and some
See ya.
people, interesting, think about it. Some people he just kind of met, and then, like Legion. Legion went and preached in the Decapolis. Jesus barely met him, right? But he went and he told people about Jesus. But then the other guys, he had to spend 3 years. He's like in Mark, he keeps telling them, don't you get it? Are you still so dull? He keeps saying if you don't understand this, how do you? And so some of them he had to take care of, and some of them just
got it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Until you get it, you don't get it.
Yeah. It's interesting. But he spent more time with some and less time with others.
Well, I mean, with his disciples, he was pouring himself into them. With the guy he healed, it was kind of like the servant who had been forgiven in the huge debt. But except for, he didn't go and choke anybody to get his 10 cents. He went around telling everybody, look, this guy healed me. I couldn't imagine being afflicted like that.
That makes you think about the good soil and the bad soil. The good soil that produced 30, 60, 100 times what was sown, which I never understood the numbers, the point of those numbers. But I'm sure there's a agricultural reason or something. But the good soil, you think about the Legion, he was good soil because he was so broken. And Jesus helped him. And so he was really good soil because he had been. But you had these other guys who were kind of religious, kind of not, kind of whatever. it's like the harder soil to deal with.
I'm not that bad.
Yeah, which is crazy, because if that's the case, we should be going, I am that bad.
Yeah.
Thank God, you know?
That's the thing.
But we always try to get the better side of it, yeah.
Yeah, we always want to compare ourselves to sins. Not as bad as that person, but we forget God does not grade on a curve.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, I just thought of this. I mean, we were having lunch and we were sharing, you know, about our conversions and things like that. And I remember that, you know, I used to think, you know, pretty highly of myself, that I was a nice person. I was a good guy. Because I wanted to believe that until I sat down and I actually studied out the cross. Once I studied that cross, you know, Jesus didn't die for a nice person. You know, I mean, if you're so good and you didn't sin, then, well, then Jesus is not your Savior, because He didn't die for you. You know, and it's hard. It was so hard to see myself as that person that nailed Jesus to that cross. And I was the mob shouting. And I was that person. And it was, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that day. I remember the place, I remember the house, I remember the living room, I remember, I'll never forget that day. And, you know, I think a person who sees himself as that person that is really nice is just, really, they're just deceived.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Very true.
They don't know. And I love it when someone says, you know, are you deceived? And most people are going to argue, no way. Well, that's the person that's the perfect deception. They're deceived, they don't even know it. They'll even argue, they'll fight you over it, you know. That's how deceived they are.
Yeah.
And our enemy, that's who he is. That's what he does. Because if he could fool and deceive a third of the angels in heaven, my God, that's scary. That scares me. That scares me to death. But yeah, we want to think of ourselves that way.
Right. Very true.
It's definitely a scary thing to think that I'm a good person, which basically you're saying I don't need Jesus. Because remember, Jesus said
very true.
the healthy aren't the ones who need a doctor.
Right.
So if you're healthy and good, then you don't need him.
Yep.
That's what you're saying.
That's exactly right.
That's a dangerous statement.
That's
now,
awesome.
now that you put it that way. That's
Yeah.
a dangerous statement. I'm a good person.
And John, you know, he healed a man born blind.
Yeah.
You know, and it got the attention of the rulers, you know, the leaders, and they even called the man in, you know, hey, give us an account, you know, who is this guy? He says, I don't know, he's inside. I mean, I don't know. And they threw him out, and Jesus came to him, and when Jesus came to him, you know, they were still in the distance, and he says, because you were blind, now you see, but those who claim to see are really blind. And so, are you talking about us? Because he said, because you claim you can see, your guilt remains.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want to be those guys.
Wow, scary.
Yeah, one thing you were saying just a minute ago before Gordon
Went off on
commented
that
on it.
tangent.
Well, before you commented on what he was saying, I was thinking about how when you read the Sermon on the Mount,
Right.
and he says, blessed are the poor in spirit.
Mm.
I remember when the first time I thought about this, and I think I shared it with Roddy once too, but it was like, if you're poor in spirit, then you need God's spirit.
Yeah.
If you're rich in spirit, you don't need God's spirit.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's
Well,
like,
that's a good.
do I want to be rich in spirit, or do I want to be poor in spirit? You know, and he goes on the list. Blessed are the, meek, because they will inherit the earth.
And I always wondered, why are they blessed? Now you just made it clear, is it because you now realize you're blessed because you now have this knowledge that you need something else.
You are poor,
Yeah,
pitiful,
that you
blind, and
realize
naked.
you're poor.
Yeah.
You know, so now you know how to remedy it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I have quite, well, I'll ask it later, because I don't want to get us off track.
No, we're done.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
is just,
This
this
was like a
this is
10-minute
tangent time.
This is more in our,
This was like a 10-minute.
This was
I
a
mean,
22-minute
this-
podcast.
Yeah, so we're stretching it out to an hour here.
So if you got something from it, share it.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, this is not really from that. It's just
Or-
more of talking about the Sermon on the Mount. I've always tried to figure it out and haven't been able to, but is the Sermon on the Mount, is it prescriptive or descriptive? Okay. You know what I mean by that? Like prescriptive meaning you need to do this, or descriptive just saying, hey, the meek, they're blessed because of this. These people is he just telling you this is a fact, or is he saying you should be that way?
I don't know.
I can't,
Seminary.
for the life of me, you can't figure it out.
It could
Cemetery
be
school.
both.
I went to cemetery school.
It could, not necessarily up to more, it could be both.
Well, I mean, because Jesus always taught, things are more than just one way. It's not like there's not more than one way to
Doesn't
heaven.
help me, Chris.
But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like in this moment, I'm not just healing a blind man. I'm teaching you a lesson. I'm doing this at the same time. You know, it's like there's always layers.
What he
That's
taught
true.
was
That makes it more confusing.
you got out.
Good.
When he taught, you got out as much as you wanted to get out.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
That's true.
sometimes you got the surface thing.
Yeah.
It was a good sermon.
That's what the difference. I'd say the Beatitudes are descriptive and the rest of it's prescriptive. Because he sets a standard
Yeah.
in the Beatitudes. The blessed is really,
What does it mean?
the only thing worse than that is when the translations would say happy is the person. But it meant security.
Yeah.
It's Macarios. It meant, if you are poor in spirit, you're still secure. If, you're a peacemaker, you're secure. And here's what's going to turn out. And then once he says that, then he's able to take you to a higher standard. I don't care that you did not murder someone. I want you not to hate people.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't care if you did not commit adultery. I want you to, look in a way that's pure
Yeah.
and celebratory. I don't know, so I guess I would say both. Or
See,
maybe I'm just trying to.
That's very
meet in the
interesting
middle.
because you gotta take the rest of the Sermon on the Mount. You
Yeah.
can't just go, okay, that's separate.
Yeah, it's all in context.
It's together.
And there's so many,
That's a good point.
there's folks, talk about descriptive and prescriptive, and then there, the log and the spec, and there's, things that are almost sounds like, a comedy routine,
Right.
Most of our,
Who's on first?
yeah, exactly. Most of our humor is, British, Canadian, and Americans have a little bit, but most of the good stuff, Western good stuff is British or Canadian, but it would be a whole different type of humor. There's the irony, ridiculousness of it. I don't know, I love Sermon on the Mount. My mind's still blown from the 80 years. My sister threw up a bunch of pictures today of the guy that converted her grandfather.
Wow.
And just, some family pictures, they got to be really good buddies, and, Granddad became one of his main song leaders when he would preach and stuff and all that, and I barely remember him.
Yeah.
But it was just, I saw that, and then on my lock screen is my Theo, and then I throw on the podcast when I'm driving today, and I'm like, well, good grief, what are you trying to get across to me? Stuff that happened 80 years ago is affecting me right now.
Right.
What's something 80 years in the future that, his kids will.
Yep.
And I saw something you posted on Facebook, or I think it was on the Grace post. It was about grandparents. It's everybody has, 4 grandparents, and then out of those 4 grandparents were 8 great grandparents, and then out of those 8 great grandparents were 16 great grandparents, and then you kept on going to like 100.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And all these people, and you do the math, and these were what, over 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So it took 1,000 people to bring you to this point,
Yeah.
this moment in time right here now.
That's crazy.
Where went to church for a long time. I sat behind a family, and which I thought was cool. There were 4 generations on one bench, or representatives of 4 generations from one bench, and then because they kind of compressed their generations. My same 4 generations weren't compressed, and so my great grandfather born in 1865. And then, how my grandchildren and great grandchildren, how far in the future are we going there? And so it really doesn't, I would have loved to know some of those people, and it's fun to find out things. But I guess it really doesn't matter if you're compressed or expanded. It's what am I doing? And like you said a while ago, it's not the monetary necessarily.
Mhm.
It's, that's nice. It's nice when someone passes, you get a little check at some point. I mean, they thought about you. That's cool. But what am I giving? When Bill took my granddad fishing, my granddad wasn't against God. He just, he had a lot of questions for God, and he had kind of just put that to the side, and, good God. But Bill made an impact on it, and that's why I'm here today, because they went fishing. So, it's what are we gonna do, or I wouldn't say the reason, but it contributed to it.
Oh,
yeah,
for sure,
yeah,
for sure.
That's amazing.
Anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that.
No,
But-
that's good.
That'll fit in, very nice.
Because it brings up another scripture that reminded me, I have it here in my notes, Proverbs 21. There's a phrase, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. Gordon was talking about our different generations that lead us to this point. There are also habits and negative things that we all pull from our past. I remember, in my family, when I look back, there's negativity that we all kind of just take on, not realizing it.
It seems like a curse,
Yeah,
like a generational curse
generational
almost.
curse. But I learned in going back in my cemetery school that I can change that. It can stop with me.
Yeah,
It
sure.
does,
Yeah.
just because that's the way it always has been, doesn't mean that's how it has to be. And if I want to see the change, I gotta begin to make those decisions. I gotta live for the benefit of tomorrow, or doing things to live from a distance. So I have to start making those changes. And by the grace of God, I can see my family tree change direction. And so this is one of those things, part of the men's series, what I say, do, think matters for tomorrow. It may not seem like it, I may not see the fruit of it, but it matters for tomorrow. And if I'm gonna be a good man, I seek to be a good man, I need to begin to do these practices that lay the seed and groundwork for them. So for me, there was a lot of the manhood study in these trees, just because I have a say-so in the type of man I'm to become. I love my dad, respect him, but he had a lot of flaws that I don't want to have.
Right.
That causes a lot of problems for him that I don't want to deal with. So the only way for me to not deal with is to fight those battles, lay the groundwork, and change, learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. That's something I was thinking about when you were talking about the 80 years.
Yeah.
I was like, there's some stuff that's happening still that's from 80 years ago, not good.
Exactly.
And I'm like, ooh, am I gonna, because there's things that I've seen about Mike. It's kind of hard on these, because I'm like, oh, your parents gonna watch this,
But one time they tune in.
The one time.
Yeah,
But no, there's
I saw what you
things,
said
there's
about
things that I'm sure that they would even say were not good, that I see in
I
me.
will.
And I've seen in my son, and I'm like, oh, man. But I was thinking today, and it's something you said made me think of it, I think even with this stuff too, it's easy to start thinking about, in 80 years, whatever, but then it dawned on me, like, what about 1,000,000 years? Like, forget 80 years. Like, do I want my daughter to grow up, she's a great woman, and she goes to hell? Well, what? No, I'd rather she wasn't a great woman, and she ended up going to heaven with God, and so I'm like, ooh, it's the spiritual, like the 80 years ago stuff that you're still around now. Like that's what I want to see in my family, more than, all this legacy of being nice and being whatever. Because I'm like, we're gonna be a nice person and go to hell. That's crazy.
That's a crazy thing I remember from Eli. Good people still go to hell.
Yeah.
Forgiving people are the ones that go to hell. But it's also, again, the generation. It's not, and you said for the million generations. So it's not just enough to plant the seed and teach my child to do these things. I need to teach in them the desire to teach it and the ability to teach it. Because what if they learn it and they have no desire to teach it, they don't know how to teach it, then it stops with them. So it's that so much responsibility as a man. You have to prepare for the future.
Yep.
And God lays all those things out to men.
Interesting, because with the campus guys we're talking about, we're reading a book that Mansfield's Manly Men. We're reading that now, kind of talking about it, and it's a spiritual book. It's more of a character book.
Yeah.
So, but it's really good. I don't know if we're talking about this right now.
Yeah, I know I reference Tony Evans a lot, but he has this book series of Kingdom. There's Kingdom Man, Kingdom Woman, Kingdom Husband, Kingdom Wife, Kingdom Sister, Kingdom Brother, Kingdom Child, etc. And he's just produced another book based on Kingdom Man, Kingdom Man Rising. And in there, I remember him saying that if a man is broken, then he'll contribute to a broken household. Then that broken household contributes to a broken community. Then that broken community contributes to a broken church. That broken church contributes to a broken county, to a broken state, to a broken country. But if that man falls under God and is healed and works under God and influences God, then he is a godly man who influences a godly household. And a godly man who was influences a godly household, and influences a godly community, influences godly church, county, etc. Also, so there's that snowball effect. And so it's an amazing idea that what I do today affects tomorrow. And if I don't realize that, with everything, no matter how small it seems, can affect positive, negative. And of course, if I want to be a good man, then I have to be aware. And that's one of those contemplative prayers is, Lord, make me aware.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of, it's kind of a play on that other one that's like, the guy tried to change the world.
Yeah.
Couldn't change the world, so he tried to change country, couldn't change the country, tried to change the state, the city, you know. And then it was just like, I gotta change myself. That's the only one I could change. And then he changed everybody else. So we can't go around forcing everybody else to change. We gotta change ourselves.
So true.
I looked up something here, and you were talking earlier about the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. We were talking about what the word blessed was, you know, to be happy, or, you know, happy is I think we have an incorrect understanding of that. Blessed means to be made holy or consecrated. So consecrated are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Or to be made holy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I think we kind of look at the word blessed and misunderstand, because then they go, blessed are those who mourn. So holy are those who are mourn or consecrated. Consecrated are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Consecrated are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Consecrated are the merciful. Consecrated are the pure in heart. Consecrated are the peacemakers. So it really changes the perspective of the whole scripture when you look at it that way. I looked up the word blessed. What does it mean? It means to be made holy or consecrated. So to be made holy, consecrated, and then everything else follows after that.
And a lot of people even freak out about the word holy. And it's like, all it means is to be set apart.
Or to be made like God.
Yeah, but it's like
Be made more like God.
they don't want to admit that they've been set apart. They don't want to admit that God has made them holy.
So that really changes the whole structure of that whole.
We forget the language wasn't religious at the time.
Yeah.
We have 2,000 years of religious baggage
Yeah.
in the language.
Yeah.
Western.
You know,
religious
them,
baggage.
language.
Exactly. You know, like
hey,
you said,
y'all.
holy. God, I'm set apart for a purpose. You know, I've been made holy to go fix that ceiling. I've been made holy to go. The same way with disciple. You know, it was not a religious word. It was a philosophical word, of course, in some ways, but it wasn't. You know, now there's a whole. I mean, you just open up everything. You know, when you say holy or blessed or disciple or all these words, but when Jesus said them, he's the one that I guess set them apart, set those words apart. But he was just taking everyday common language. It's tough though, all these years later. Yeah, for sure.
I do think in some ways we've taken the idea of disciple, we have, what's the word? We've kind of removed the definition from the word, if that makes sense. Like gentleman used to be. You used to have to own land to be a gentleman. You couldn't just be, it wasn't just characteristics of a gentleman. A gentleman was something.
The gentry.
Yeah, you had to have, what is it?
The gentry.
Yeah.
Gentleman was part of the gentry.
Yeah, you had to have certain things, you had to have whatever. And nobody could just come up and be like, I'm a gentleman. You see me open the door? I opened the door for her right there. I'm a gentleman. You'd be like, that's not what a gentleman is.
Well, you were supposed
But
to
I
do
think
that.
we've done that with disciple. Like disciple now is my brother even mentioned this to me several years ago. He's like, I think the word, because the word Christian was the same way for a long time. It just didn't really mean a lot. It just kind of meant I just kind of
You
had
converted,
this.
that's it.
I believe in
therefore I am.
Jesus, and so I'm a Christian.
cultural.
And then my brother mentioned too that he says it's the same thing now with disciple. In a lot of ways, because so many people use it,
Right.
it doesn't carry because for Jesus, it literally meant something. And there's a book that I'm reading about. I think I mentioned it last time, the sit at the feet of Rabbi Jesus. And it said, oh, no, that's not right. It's this other one I'm reading. It's called The Jesus That I Never Knew. I forget who it is. But he says the goal of a disciple was to be just like his rabbi.
He gave up
To
everything.
be
his
just
father
like his
did.
rabbi.
Yeah.
And did
It wasn't
everything
to, because, and I think about that sometimes. I think about, like if somebody just watched my life and I couldn't tell them, this is what, they just watched me how I live. Would they be like, that guy's a Christian, he looks good. That's what I think Jesus would be like if I saw him. If I couldn't tell them, oh, I'm a Christian, I couldn't say those words, would they look at me and go, yeah, I think you are, because I see that, and that's what I think Jesus is like, And it convicts me, because I'm like, ooh, I need to live in such a way, forget church, I mean, like, my character, my everything I need to look like Jesus more, But I think that's kind of, we've done that with that word, too.
If I was a carpenter, or if I was a farmer, and I had a disciple, they would eventually, it probably would be my son, or one of my sons.
Sure.
But even if it wasn't, if I brought someone on, they would eventually become so much like me, they would take over, because my life expectancy wasn't 85, 90 years. I mean, it was very short. And so someone took over that trade, my life, my customers, they took all that over. Disciple you become like a teacher.
Yeah.
We've heard that before. And so much so that you become that person. And when I think about Jesus going back, ascending back into heaven, and the angel telling, all right guys, let's get going.
Yeah.
Well, they were his replacements.
Yeah.
Right?
He had 2.5, 3 years, he had prepared them to replace him.
Yeah.
And then they, to other men, so on and so forth. But, yeah, it's, my dad was a builder, and I had the eye, but I don't have any of the talent. Even when I did have all the tools and everything I needed, all the equipment, I didn't have the talent that he did. I was a great gopher. I really was, but if I would've, I wish, there's so many times I wish I would've, hung in there and become his equal, I don't know if I ever would've, but, becomes equal, because I enjoyed the life we had, the visits and the talking and the singing that we did, while we were on a roof, or while we were building furniture, or while we were doing these things, I like that so much. I didn't get much of the other, I don't remember it, but it would have been cool, old school to replace,
Yep.
to not sell the shop, not sell the, his equipment, but to take it over and do it myself.
Right.
And opportunity missed, but
So if your dad was here today and you told him, I'm a builder, what would you say?
what was it?
If your dad was here with us today, he was like, and you told him, I'm a builder just like my dad, what would he say?
He would, his personality, he would go with it.
Yeah?
And
He'd be nice about it?
He would pull something out of obscure past that I did something really cool, You ought to seen him do his hobby work when he did these decorations. Yeah, it was second grade in 4-H, but he would make it sound like.
But he wouldn't be like,
He wouldn't call you out.
he wouldn't go,
No,
okay.
no.
He wouldn't be like, okay, you're like, well, I'm gonna build your house for you. He might go,
No.
hold
yeah.
on, can I help you?
Yeah, he's like, well, let's talk about that, and then at 2 or 3 more nights like this, he would tell you, hey, he fell off the ladder at this point, and he rolled off the roof this time, and he did this stuff, he knocked down, I spent more money fixing his mistake than I made on the job. He would tell some of those stories as he got to know you.
Yeah.
But he would say we a lot, let's put it that way. If he told a story exactly, if it was all about him, he would say we.
Sweet man.
Yeah, and so, I don't know. I hope I didn't get any of the building skills. I hope I picked up some other stuff. but-
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about that, you know, my dad was a boat captain. He never wanted me on.
Yeah.
Mm.
They want you to do that?
Never wanted me.
Yeah.
That's why.
He didn't
Forced
want
me to
you,
school.
or you didn't want to?
No, he didn't want me. I thought it
He
was
didn't,
cool,
okay.
but he was like, because he was gone all the time.
Yeah.
And he was always away, missed birthdays, holidays.
Mhm.
He didn't want that for us. Plus, you know, look at my parents, we never felt poor, even though we were.
Yep.
You know, so when I look at my dad's struggles and things like that, it makes me not want to be in that position, but you know, we learn from it. You know,
Yep.
We're the reason I work hard,
Yeah, definitely.
you know.
For sure.
Yep.
I think being a disciple is like, you know, I think about just how we're kind of disciples of our parents too in some ways. Like, you know, we learn stuff from them, and there are things that I see in myself that I still do the same way that my dad did, because that's where I learned it from. And well, my son learned the same thing from me.
Definitely.
You know, different trades.
Being in kids
different
class,
things,
definitely.
How to use a hammer, how to respect a knife, you know. All the things my dad taught me, little quirks and things that I kind of do that were just like my dad because I was watching exactly how he did it, and I carry those things. Now there are good things and there are bad things about it. There are bad traits, like you said, that you can carry, that you learn and you can hand down to your children, and there are good things. And I think as a disciple of Jesus, we try to set at his feet, learn everything we can. And then he also said to the 12, he said, you're gonna do greater things than this. And I think once we've learned to a point where we have a good understanding of it, then we take what we've learned and grow with it and try to take it and make it even greater.
Yeah.
To add to our knowledge, you know, love, more love. I think, you know, like if you would have grown up and been a builder, you would have had greater technology than your dad had to use. You would have been you would have had more knowledge than your dad because you would have better tools to work with. And you would kind of modified, but the core of it, you still had gotten from your dad.
Yeah.
And so, but then you take it and you make it even more, because you're able to add more to it. And I think as a disciple of Jesus, we get the core, we can add to, you know, because now we've got the Bible app, we've got physical Bibles, we've got study tools, we've got BEMA. I mean, you think about all the different things we can add to, but we got to have that core, and you know, and then take it higher in that aspect of being a disciple.
You know, one of the, I love, you know, if you know me, you know my favorite play. And I just remember one part in the play where, you know, Peter, you know, the church was always fighting battles. They were, you know, were actually, you know, you had the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin and, you know, and all the teachers of law that were fighting against, you know, the early church in the beginning. And then you had the Romans, and one of the characters in the play was a Roman character. He was a centurion, and Peter, you know, and this is toward the end of the play where, you know, they kind of developed a rapport, and you know, Peter was always humble. He was always reaching out to this hardcore Roman centurion, and his heart is starting to soften. And he's talking with him, and he's telling him, I wish you could have been there. I wish you could have seen Jesus. If only you could have been there. And he looks at him, and you know, all this is artistic, artistic freedom, I guess, and because it's nowhere in Acts, but which the play was based on. But anyway, then the Roman centurion looks at Peter and says, I have seen him. I see you. You know, and I hope to, you know, to be like that. That somebody will see me, and then they'll see Christ. You know? But I love that moment in that play. I had to throw in upside down plug in there.
I know. I was thinking play, one play. Oh,
Upside down. Yeah.
That guy
Yeah, as
said-
soon as he said play, I
When he
knew
said it, when he started talking, people,
When he-
oh, that's what he's talking
I
about.
mentioned the symbol on
Powers
the
Pandemic.
line.
You watch that
Now we
right
don't have
side
time
up.
to kill, we have to kill 3,000 Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Is that,
Yeah.
I haven't
should watch
seen
that
it,
again.
but as soon as you said my favorite play,
Yeah.
you should watch it.
Yeah, you should. It's free. It's on YouTube.
That's
That's-
fantastic.
To me, one of the best songs of any musical ever, of any time,
Which one?
is Remember the Lord.
Mm.
At the end.
At the end, gotcha.
Oh my goodness.
You better have some Kleenex nearby.
If you
No,
don't
I
cry,
do.
you might not be,
Yeah.
might not be alive.
You're going down.
Where's that chicken pull?
check your salvation.
What's,
Check yourself.
I don't even know. I mean, even if you're not a Christian, I think you still
Yeah.
We will call down fire in heaven for
It's so
Yeah.
good.
All right, let's start the after party. So join us next week for our BEMA episode 29, Still Images of the Desert.
Don't forget to like and share.
2 other trees. I forgot to plug the thing in, so our sound is probably gonna suck. But.
Oh, I'm sure. Like, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say?